Hey everyone, hope everyone's having a good conference here. I'm certainly pumped. Today we're going to be talking about why BI is not enough. So first off, who am I? I'm Tejas Manohar. I'm founder and co-CEO over at HighTouch. HighTouch is a fast-growing startup based in San Francisco with customers all around the world. And we're in the data space, similar, part of the modern data stack as Airbyte. And we are specifically focused on data activation or in reverse ETL. So helping companies use all the data in their data warehouses to power business operations. Prior to founding HighTouch, I am an engineer by trade. I was an early engineer at a couple of companies, most prominently Segment, which is also in the data space and one of the leading customer data platforms. And outside of work, or slightly in work, I love learning about databases and distributed systems out of all areas in computer science. I think that's really the most exciting space for me to watch all the innovation in. And I am a human, living in San Francisco and have various hobbies here like ping pong and running. So excited to join the conference today. So while data is hot right now, and there's Snowflake and as a cloud data warehouse, there's technologies like dbt that are really taking over the community, and so many analysts are starting to change the way they're doing things like transforming data or monitoring their data pipelines or orchestrating them. The end goal of most data infrastructure, data engineering, analytics engineering work has been the same for decades at this point. You get data from all these different places, you put it into a warehouse, you build some golden records, and you do what exactly you see on the screen here. Build out dashboards and BI reports so that the business can analyze data and make decisions. And we considered a data job well done if you had data inside of a central database like a data warehouse that you could refresh nightly. It was good enough to power board reports and important business decisions. And the data was portable in that, different teams like marketing or sales could export it into a CSV and open it up in Excel and start crunching it in different ways that made sense for them until 2022. So today, and what the founders of Airbyte called me and asked me to speak at Move Data, and they wanted me to pick one message to put on a billboard and to tell everyone in the data space. And if I were to say that, I would say, let's flip that idea of BI being the end state on its head and say BI is not enough and data teams should do more than reporting. So our thesis in this market is just given how much work has been put into building a central source of truth to build great best-in-house BI and analytics at your companies, it's time to put that work to actually drive more powerful business outcomes, to drive business operations, to power live production use cases, and overall to really go beyond reporting. So there's three ways that businesses can really start activating their data, and data engineering teams and analytics teams can really start activating their data. One of them, which is the most popular, which I think we're really spearheading here at HighTouch, is called reverse ETL. It's taking data from the warehouse, throwing it into those business systems that are typically considered a source to the warehouse and starting to make them a destination. The next that we'll cover is data apps, or powering live product experiences, production experiences directly off the data warehouse. The third one, maybe this isn't a live thing that tons of companies are doing, but I think that one of the future ways to drive value from data teams is going to be taking the data warehouse and actually using it as a production database. So we'll talk a little bit about that fun stuff at the end. So first off, reverse ETL. Reverse ETL is one of the buzziest words here in the data space in 2021 and 2022. And what does it really mean? It means let's take all the data from the warehouse, and instead of just using it for BI and reports and stuff like that, there are hundreds of SaaS tools like Salesforce or Marketo or Zendesk or Facebook ads that businesses are relying on. And all of those need data to really be used to the fullest. So why don't we use the data warehouse, the source of truth for analytics, to be the source of truth for operations by bringing data from the warehouse into those systems or reverse ETLing it? So let's take a look at what that looks like in action. So example number one here of reverse ETL. is taking data from some sort of SQL database or data warehouse and throwing it into a business SaaS system like Salesforce. You can use reverse ETL here to sync dimensions, like let's say a last login time of your customer, or maybe the number of API calls that they made in the last 30 days, or any sort of information some sort of sales or support or service person in Salesforce would want to have directly from the data warehouse instead of inventing another source of truth. And this kind of process is becoming pretty commonplace and becoming automated with tools like HighTouch. Second big use case of reverse ETL that we've seen, and there are plenty just due to the sheer number of business systems in a company these days, is powering internal alerts. So while the default way of doing things might be like refreshing a dashboard to see, what are the new customers that closed in the last week, or what's the new cool activity that's happening in my application, with reverse ETL, people are starting to just, take diffs off the warehouse and start sending alerts directly to different business users who live in systems like Slack or email, or sending them a text message, and by sending data out of the warehouse to different systems. Next way to activate your data that we'll talk about is data apps. So this is a fun one. I would say this is more of an up and coming one, but it really starts to extend people's imagination for what the data warehouse can be used for. So example number one, and at a high level, I would say a data app is really any way to use the data warehouse for powering an actual production live customer experience. So example number one, online personalization. The data warehouse has all your data. It also has the ability for you to compute things like predictions or recommendations or all these sort of things that are maybe hard to do in your application database. So what we're seeing as a pattern is people taking data from the data warehouses and taking aggregate metrics like product recommendations and porting them over to your production application like a MySQL as seen here to power actual live experiences in your app. Example number two is now tons of companies also have analytical features inside their application. So say you're building something like a Google Analytics Lite part of your application or some reporting capabilities in your application. A lot of companies we're seeing are actually doing that in the data warehouse, doing that with data engineering teams, and then porting the aggregate metrics into their app database again. And third one is powering internal applications. So let's say you're building an app internally, like an internal CRM, because you're in a really niche industry that you don't want to use something like Salesforce. You're building your own kind of application. Maybe it's for like real estate, or maybe it's for like a gym or something like that. Well, a lot of times you might want to bring data that's historical, data from 10 years ago, data from your analytics team, data like lifetime value that use a data science model to produce. And a lot of companies are taking that data from the warehouse and again, putting in a production database where they can use it to build stuff like internal applications or internal customer dashboards. So far we've covered, two ways that data teams can start going beyond BI, because BI is not enough, and start actually using their data and their data engineering resources to drive production applications and use cases around the business. But let's talk a bit about where the technology is going to wrap it up. So I think today we see this dichotomy in the market, right? There's transactional databases like Postgres that you might use to power kind of live clicky applications where you can insert rows really fast, read them really fast. And then there's analytics databases that are meant for having tons and tons of data and running these longer aggregate queries that join a bunch of different tables together in ad hoc ways. And you kind of got to pick and choose tools for your different use cases. For example, if you want to do a bunch of complex aggregations, you might do that in a warehouse and port it into a production database to actually power that live application. And that world is changing. That's what I'm really excited about as we look to 2023, 2024, 2025. I think the days of having an OLTP database and OLAP, OLAP database are certainly there, are certainly going to still exist. But what I think is really exciting is as these technologies kind of combine with features like Snowflake's Unistore, which came out earlier this summer, that actually allows you to run more transactional workloads directly on top of analytical databases like Snowflake. And I think that will really change the way that people see data engineering and data infrastructure as a whole to just being a part of the core technology stack. So that's a wrap. Our main thesis, if we were going to say one message on a big billboard to the data market in 2022, I would say that BI is not enough, and it's time to activate your data. And the 3 ways you can do that are 1, reverse ETL, 2, data apps, and 3, as we start to look ahead, actually taking your production data warehouse, you're taking your data warehouse and using it for production operations. So thanks for having me today. If anyone's interested in talking more about this, I'm available at tejas@hightouch.com or Tejas Manohar, so my first and last name, on most social networks. Thank you.